Welcome to This Is Your Life. Tonight's program is being telecast in color from the NBC studios in Hollywood, California, ladies and gentlemen. And waiting in a nearby corridor is a man who has befriended and reformed some of the toughest criminals in America. He's from the federal penitentiary at Atlanta, Georgia, but that's only half the story. The road that took him there is a story that tops any that could be told by the men behind those prison walls. Now, he was invited by NBC tonight to see a documentary film on criminal rehabilitation. Now, instead of that, he'll find himself facing this camera, which we're sending out of our studio and into the corridor, and you'll see him in just a moment. So come along. Here we go. All right, give me a microphone here to take. You want to bring this camera alive? Everybody, come on and join me. Here we go. Heavy doors at NBC. Oh, hello. Hello, everybody. Oh, hello. This is Chaplain Park Tucker. Hello, I'm Ralph Edwards.
Oh, we've seen you on the television.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah.
It's a real pleasure to meet you here and all your friends.
The warden and his wife, did you meet them?
Oh, the warden Smith.
Smith, yes, he's from our prison here in California.
How do you do, Mr. Smith? Pleasure to know you. Well, thank you. The lights that have come on suddenly here in the hall around here are sort of a signal that we're on NBC television coast to coast.
Well, do you think they'll get it down the penitentiary in Atlanta? We have some of the boys looking at it.
Yeah? Do you watch every Wednesday night down there?
I'd like to say hello to Jack Wolf and all the boys down there. Hi, Jack.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it's nice to have this little interview with you here, and I know they'll be surprised to see you.
Tell all the boys in the joint I said hello.
Okay. This may come as somewhat of a shock to you.
Well, I'm used to
Chaplain Tucker, but of the Federal Penitentiary, Atlanta, Georgia. But tonight, this is your life. I'm not kidding at all. You know the program?
We look at it every night.
Yes, sir. You're it tonight. We hope you'll be both surprised and pleased, are you? Yes, he's a hard man to fool, isn't he, Warden Smith? Thank you for helping us put it over. Now, what was the purpose of your trip to California?
Well, I was supposed to come to review the religious program at Terminal Island, then I was going to go up to the Rock or Alcatraz to see some of my old friends.
Well, you're still going up there, I think. Mr. Preston Smith, warden at Terminal Island, California, we want to thank you for keeping us posted, and thank you, Mrs. Smith. Well, now, Chaplain Tucker, once the world very nearly came to an end for you in a mine shaft deep beneath the earth. The ordeal you suffered there and its consequences make the thrilling story. Will begin in just a moment. Chaplain Park Tucker, ladies and gentlemen, the federal penitentiary. You say it for me.
The Federal Penitentiary.
I'm glad one of us can talk. From Atlanta, Georgia. Pleasure to have you here, sir. You say you know this is your life.
Yes, that's right. We have about 20 men tonight down there by the graciousness of Mr. Bennett and Warden Wilkinson that these 20 men can come out of the cell blocks and they'll be down there having a cup of coffee looking at this, and I'd like to say hello to the men. And
you mean this is a special privilege they have each week?
And as they say in the prison, tell all the boys in the joint. Okay.
Is this a special privilege that they have each week? We're very flattered that the men are allowed to watch This Is Your Life. Tonight, we're going to relive with you a terrifying experience. In the course of that event, your old self, the man you were, Chaplain Tucker, died, and a new person was born. Now, we're eager to know both of those fellas. So, will you be seated, sir?
Thank you.
Chaplain Park Tucker, Atlanta, Georgia. This is your life.
Come and listen, you fellers, so young and so fine, and seek not your fortune in the dark, dreary mine. It will form as a...
Born in 1909 in Sunbury, Pennsylvania, you grow up with your four sisters in the town of West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Your father's a coal miner. As a boy, you loved to sit on his knee and listen while your dad and other miners tell stories of mine disasters. Is that right, Park?
That's right.
In school, you're sort of rowdy and mischievous as a
Worse
kid.
than that.
But was it worse than that? When you're 14, what caused the big blow-up with your teacher in the 7th grade?
Well, she said that I went to college to be smart, and she said, Park Tucker, you're too smart, and out the back door, and I graduated, the only one in my class.
You were dropped from school there, weren't you?
It was the first big mistake of my life, and I
This
like
was a great sorrow to our mother. She used to pray constantly that Park would return to school and receive an education.
You should know that voice, Mr. Tucker. Who is it?
Sister Grace.
Your sister Grace. Your other two living sisters, Jane and Clara, are watching tonight. in Chickasha, Pennsylvania, and El Sobrante, California, and mighty proud of you. But here with us from West Pittston, Pennsylvania, is Mrs. George Walker, your sister Grace. Here's Grace.
Boy, this is great.
What happened when Park was dropped from school, Ms. Walker?
Well, Mr. Edwards, Park worked in a coal mine for a while. Then he became sort of a rolling stone, drifting from one job to another in different towns. But the family, especially mother and father, they began to worry and the way he was growing up.
And finally, your dad gives you sort of a talking to, and you become a coal miner at the Ewan Colliery No. 7 shaft of the Pittston Coal Company. So a life without purpose leads you to a place where disaster lies in wait for you. Thank you, Grace. Mrs. George Walker. You'll see Brother later.
Roll on, buddy, pull your load coal. Now how can I pull? Then the wheels won't roll.
Well, you're 19 now, Park Tucker. 19 years of age, and you've gone a lot farther down the path of the wrong kind of living. How would you describe the Park Tucker you were between the ages 19 and 22?
Well, I'll tell you, I was like many a young boy, I imagine, that's looking at the program tonight. I wanted to go out to burn the world down, but I had to come back to get a few more matches. And unlike some of the boys that I'm trying to help now in the institution, it's only by God's grace that I'm a chaplain tonight instead of an inmate in a penitentiary.
Every night your mother begs you to grasp a faith, a belief, but to no avail. And then the day of your fate dawns, October 22nd, 1932. As usual, you step into the miner's cage with the other miners, and down, down, down you go, 300 feet down into the cold darkness of the mine. You begin work. You and your companions load 6 cars of coal and start loading the 7th car. And then you hear the sound all miners dread, the rumbling roar of the start of a cave-in. What happens to you, Reverend Tucker?
Well, there was Billy Orr, a good friend of mine, and Roy Ruggles, a very fine gentleman, and we heard this terrible noise, and words have always failed me when I try to describe it, but the thing is that I tried to escape. I tried to go to the car, and I took a hold of the car, and when I did, it was the last thing I ever did with my left hand. The rock came down and took my hand off.
Half buried yourself, you hear the cries of injured and dying men. With your free hand, you light your carbide light, and what do you see?
I saw Roy Ruggles behind me, and he was dying. He was crushed to death, and the blood was coming out of his eyes and nose and mouth, and the last thing he said to me is, "Park, pray for me. I'm dying." And I didn't know how to pray. I was the average product of the Roaring Twenties, a nominal religious fellow. But I prayed that day, and I asked God to save his life and soul and save me and save my soul. And I added a little extra prayer. I was like Jacob of old. I wanted to get out myself with my own hide.
Right.
And I said, "Lord, if you save me, I'll be something in life."
Now the creeping rocks reach you and grind your body against the mining car. You hear your bones breaking. There, buried alive, you give up your old self. And you have already said the promise you made?
I made a promise to God that if he'd save my life, that the rest of my days I'd serve humanity.
So while the rescue team struggles to reach you, a new Park Tucker is born.
It took us 7 hours to make that rescue. I was one of the first to reach Park.
I'm sure you'll know that voice.
That's my brother-in-law, Jack, a fine man.
The husband of your own sister, Margaret, who risked his life to save yours. Margaret is no longer living, but here from West Pittston, Pennsylvania, is your brother-in-law, Mr. John Malone. Here's John.
Hi, Bud. I'd like to say that by God's grace in this man that my life was saved.
Yes, sir. Mr. Malone, I've often thought that men like you who go down into mines on rescue operations are among the world's greatest heroes.
Well, I wouldn't want to do it again, Ralph.
No, sir.
The roof was cracking, big rocks was falling, and we had to run out several times in case we get buried ourselves.
Well, now, in what condition did you find Park and the other survivors?
They were in very bad shape, Ralph. Part was almost covered with rock. We had to lever some of the rocks and break them with hammers to get Park free.
Of course, you had to keep running out from time to time
Yes.
yourself, didn't you?
And when we broke the rocks, got Park free, he said to me, he said, "John, If I get out of this, I'll spend the rest of my life for the Lord.
And only that vow keeps Park alive in the weeks to come. Thank you, Mr. John Malone. Thank you.
I have known in my day who lived just to labor his whole life away.
So you're saved from a living tomb and taken to a hospital where your medical record reads fractured skull, broken pelvis, legs broken in 13 places, gangrene of left arm amputated. And then a young minister comes to see you.
Wonderful man.
Park asked me how he could fulfill his promise to God now that his body was broken and handicapped.
You haven't heard that voice in 23 years, Reverend Tucker. Who is it?
That's Henry Corey, the man that really helped me.
He was minister of your family's church at that time, now minister of the Orthodox Presbyterian Church of Sunnyvale, California. Here's the Reverend Henry W. Corey.
Good to see you, Paul. Wonderful to see you again.
23 years of age. Does he look about the same here?
He looks
Mr.
as natural
Corey?
as breathing.
How did you help Park decide what to do with him?
Well, I could tell you that.
Well, I'll tell you,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards, Park, I told Park that if he really wanted to follow through and become a minister, he'd have to go back to school.
Yeah.
And he said, all right, he said, I'll start in college. College? I had to tell this man, that really floored me, because I had to tell this fellow, actually, I had to tell him that he was positively illiterate.
That word fooled you, too, didn't it?
Yeah, I didn't know what he meant, and then I thought that seeing that I was illiterate, it made a good preacher out of me, so I said, amen.
You tell Park he'll have to start where he left off. Isn't that right, Mr. Corey, in the 7th grade? How did he take to that?
Well, it was a shock.
It sure was.
And I must say that, as I remember, he said to me, man, I'm 23 years old, and 7th grade is for kids. But I must say that he faced the humiliation of the situation like a real man. And when I left him, he was making plans to go back to school and fulfill his promise made to Christ down in the coal mine.
Thank you, Reverend Henry W. Corey of Sunnyvale, California. On your accident compensation money, you enroll in the 7th grade at Wheaton Academy in Wheaton, Illinois. You're a grown man starting to school with children. You have to bear many humiliations, as Mr. Corey said. How did children react to having you in class with them?
Well, I guess the best description, I was like a giraffe in a zoo with all the kids around me, and some of the little children said, why, you're just as big as my father, and he's a Ph.D. over in college, and I didn't know what Ph.D. I thought that meant phenomenally dumb.
With you squeezed into a back seat, your teacher has to find a new way of addressing her class.
Each
Yes.
day she would begin class by saying, "Good morning, children, and you too, Mr. Tucker."
The voice of a fellow who shared the same rooming house with you. Do you remember him? He was then in college at Wheaton. When you were in grade school, you haven't seen him in 14 years, now pastor of the First Baptist Church at Mill Valley, California, your good friend, the Reverend Burton Jones. Here's Mr. Jones. Good to see you. Good to see you. Mr. Jones, you sure have to admire the spunk of a grown man starting 7th grade, don't you?
You certainly do. But Park really wanted to stick it through, and he did.
Sure did.
You remember the time when you were asked to recite in Latin, counting from 1 to 10?
Yes, the thing that helped me out when I worked in the coal mines, Ralph, I used to speak a little Italian with the boys, and we used to count our paycheck in those days, and the Italian boys would count in Italian. I got to be able to count, and so this day in class, the teacher said, now you count in Latin. And I didn't know Latin, but if I was going to be a preacher, I knew I'd have to connive a little bit on the side, so I said, I'll give it in Italian, see if she knows the difference. So I went, una, due, tre, quattro, cinque, all the way to the end of it, and she scratched her head and she said, well, the enunciation is not just good, but that's all right.
It didn't take Park long to get the hang of things, did it, Reverend?
No, he did not. In 2 years, and in the 2 summers, he finished all of his high school work and was ready for college.
Thank you, Reverend Burton Jones of Mill Valley, California. But summer of 1936 finds your progress stopped cold. You're custodian of the city dump in your hometown. With only one arm, it's tough to find any other job. You need exactly $350 to enter college, and it would take a miracle for you to get that much money. What happened then, Chaplain Tucker?
Well, my good mother and father that have gone to be with the Lord, they always exhorted me as a young Christian boy that if I'd have faith in the Lord, that God would provide. And I prayed and asked the Lord that he might send me this money, and I got a slip from the registrar, said if you come to school, bring $355. Well, I prayed all summer, and I guess my prayers didn't go very high, but a few days before it was time to matriculate at the school, a check came from Scotland, 70 pounds in the Bank of Glasgow, Scotland. And right away, I figured $5 was a pound, 5 times 70 is $350. And when I saw that was $350, I remembered it was $350, and then with my materialistic heart, I looked up to heaven and said, Lord, you should have sent the $5 other.
With your heart inspired by this lesson of faith, you enter Houghton College and make of yourself such a fine speaker you're able to earn your way through college in Eastern Baptist Seminary.
During those years, Park was invited to preach in more than 300 churches.
You said, is she here backstage as I brought him in? Have you got my wife here? You found time to court a wonderful girl, and yes, she's here, the girl you married in 1942 from Atlanta, Georgia, Mrs. Tucker, your wife, Margaret. Oh, fabulous. Come on, sit here beside your husband, Miss Tucker. Sit right over there. After graduation, your husband is called to his first regular church, the Tabernacle Baptist Church in Chillicothe, Ohio. Isn't that right, Miss Tucker?
Yes, that's right. And while we were at Chillicothe, we often used to drive out past the Federal Reformatory there. Park had a yearning to somehow get over the fence. He felt that if he could just talk with the boys, that he could help them. He felt that in his own youth, he had so nearly been or become a criminal himself. In fact, I think whenever he sees a man at the Atlanta Penitentiary now, he says there, but for the grace of God, goes Park Tucker.
Yes, he was saying something like that. And you heed this powerful call to your conscience and apply for entrance into the U.S. prison chaplaincy. 1948, you've exchanged your pleasant church for a grim prison world behind barred cells and walls. You've become chaplain at the Federal Penitentiary, Atlanta, Georgia. You mingle with the men in their cells at their jobs. Soon, your remarkable influence for good begins changing hardened criminals into model prisoners.
I was in reformatories and prisons almost half my life, from the time I was 11 years old. I was sent to Atlanta for creating a riot in a federal reformatory.
Now, behind that voice is one of your many success stories, Chaplain. Before this young man met you, he was so bitter he hated the whole world. Now a free man here from Atlanta, Georgia, is 25-year-old Seaborn Scoggins. Here he is. Oh, it's wonderful of you to volunteer to come here, Seaborn. What was your record there at Atlanta Penitentiary before you met Chaplain Tucker, Mr. Scoggins?
Well, I was pretty bitter and always in trouble and in solitary confinement, sometimes for 2 or 3 months at a time. And Reverend Tucker used to come down and have long talks with me. Mm-hmm. And he told me about this graveyard they had in back of the prison. It was called No Man's Land.
Yeah, better known as Woodpecker Hill, the boys.
He said, that's where you go when nobody else wants you.
That's right.
So I decided right then and there that I didn't want to go there. With the
God bless you.
help of Reverend Tucker.
Seaborn's a wonderful boy, and he's come a long way. We prayed much for him. It's been a real struggle in his life, but when the world sees a young boy like this, some of those fellows out there that think they can take the country apart, Seaborn's a testimony that it can't be done. He's an example of God's grace and what the Lord can do for a boy.
And fellows like you helping out. You were in Chaplain Tucker's group therapy class. When you proved you had changed, how did you gain your freedom?
Reverend Tucker took my case before the parole board, and when I got out, he got me a job with Mr. Davis, and Mr. Davis helped me to get established in business.
Yeah, what kind of business do you do now?
His restaurant.
Yes, and then he had the other...
Well, I went into the shoe repair business, but it didn't work out too well, and so I was thinking that when I got back home in Atlanta that I would try the painting contracting business.
Painting contracting business, and what is your address so that if any of the folks in Atlanta want a good painting contractor?
It's 109 Simpson Street, Northwest Atlanta, Georgia.
And if they want their shoes repaired, too, you can go back and visit.
It was brave of you to tell your past, Mr. Scoggins. By volunteering to come here, you represent hundreds of former inmates. Like you today, they are happy and respected members of their communities, thanks to Chaplain Tucker and men such as he. Thank you, Seaborn Scoggins. 1956, this is your 8th year at Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, Chaplain Tucker, and every day has been a payment on that promise you made when you lay crushed in a mine shaft.
It's a surprising fact that at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, our average church attendance is higher in prison than the average attendance outside the prison.
Well, that may stump you. Whose voice is that, Chaplain
That's
Tucker?
Mr. James V. Bennett, a wonderful man.
Your big boss himself. Here from Washington, D.C. is the director of the United States Bureau of Prisons, Mr. James V. Bennett. Yes, all afternoon we've been together. Do you attribute this high church attendance to Chaplain Tucker, Mr. Bennett?
Indeed I do. Nobody in the federal prison has to go to church.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Bennett, there was one fellow that we tried to rehabilitate. We got him out past the third gate, and I said, now you go home, behave yourself. I preached to you. And you know what he said to me? He said, after a person hears you preach this penitentiary, brother, he'll never come back again.
Well, I can't admit that. I think the reason is, Ralph, that it's because of the inspiring life that Chaplain Tucker has read in his messages that account for the high church
You've been a
attendance.
great inspiration, too, Mr. Bennett.
Well, what do the men call him?
Don't tell him that.
Yeah, Square Joe.
Tell
Isn't that right?
him a good name.
Yes, well, I think they have
all-
confidence in Chaplain Tucker because they believe he's a square Joe.
That's right.
And that he'll go to bat for the boys in whom he believes.
Well, we have great love for the men, and just like yourself, Mr. Bennett, we're not there just to guard men. We're trying to take these wards of the government and try to show them a better life.
Well, you've done...
When tension is high, what happens?
We call on such men as Chaplain Tucker to go to the men because they believe in him and they know he won't betray their confidence.
Well, our congratulations to you, too, Mr. Bennett, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Your full-scale program of business courses, trade schools, psychotherapy, and religion give a prisoner every chance to return successfully to law-abiding society. Thank you.
See you in jail.
Now, Chaplain Tucker, we have two more surprises for you to complete your life. Here's your little daughter, Linnell Tucker. Here's Linnell, and your son, young Richard Park Tucker. Here's Dick, the boy. Hey!
Keep hope, have faith, and never let down. Somewhere in glory.
This is your life, Chaplain H. Park Tucker, a life well worth saving from death in a coal mine. In your busy career, you're also a flying chaplain of the Civil Air Patrol, flying your plane with one hand on rescue missions. Your life makes truth of the words from the book of Psalms. He heard my prayers and brought me out of the pit of misery and out of the mire and set my feet upon a rock. Yes, now, Chaplain Tucker, the first event in your future will be a party tonight given by Prell in your honor at the Knickerbocker Hotel here in Hollywood, where your family and friends from out of town have been staying. To remember this night, you'll have your own film of this program and a Bell and Howell sound projector for showing it, and also this Bell and Howell movie camera and a generous supply of film. There you are, sir. Now, for Mrs. Tucker, Prell asked Marshall Jewelers of New York City to design this gold charm bracelet, so Marshall did, with each charm marking an event in your life, and a nice gift here, too, from Prell and Marshall. Now, to send your sermons out to various hospitals, you've often had to borrow the tape recorder from the penitentiary. Now you can record your sermons at home in comfort as Prell presents you with an RCA Victor high-fidelity Victrola phonograph with a built-in tape recorder. It's been a heartfelt wish of yours to maintain a scholarship fund named in memory of your parents, so for the Joseph and Henrietta Tucker Scholarship Fund at Houghton College, Prell wants you to have this check for $1,000. And also, I want to get this in, a telegram from Colonel W.R. Brewster, President, Georgia Military Academy in Atlanta. You have a full scholarship for your son to attend the Georgia Military Academy in Atlanta. This is your life, Reverend H. Park Tucker. Good night. God bless you.